Everyone thinks Pride and Prejudice is the world's greatest romance. They're wrong. It's a brutal story about how snap judgments can ruin your life, and it exposes a dangerous flaw every single one of us has. On the surface, it's a story of elegant balls, witty conversations, and walks through the picturesque English countryside. But beneath that polished veneer, this is a survival story. It's about 5 sisters facing the terrifying imminent prospect of homelessness, where one wrong move at a dance, one clumsy word, or one misplaced look could leave them destitute and utterly ruined. And the man who holds the key to their salvation, the one person with the power to save them from social and financial oblivion, is the man they despise the most. This is the world Jane Austen created, not as a gentle fairy tale, but as a razor-sharp reflection of a society where a woman's entire destiny rested on a knife's edge. Jane Austen was born in 1775 into what we call the Regency era, a time of immense social change, rigidly constrained by unspoken rules. As an astute and often silent observer in her own family, she saw the intricate, often cruel, dance of society and the precarious position of women. For the daughters of the gentry, women of good birth but small fortune, like Austen herself, life was a high-stakes gamble with a terrible downside. They could not inherit property in the same way a son could. They could not enter a profession. Their education was not meant to foster independence, but to create an accomplished, marriageable product. Their one and only path to a secure future, to a respectable place in society, was through marriage. This wasn't merely a romantic choice, it was a career move, the single most important business transaction of their lives. A good match meant stability, safety, and social standing. A bad match, or no match at all, meant a slow descent into poverty and obscurity. For a gentlewoman of this period, being destitute wasn't just an inconvenience. It meant a life of humiliation, perhaps as a poorly treated governess, the intellectual servant of a wealthy family, or as a dependent spinster, living on the begrudging charity of a brother or cousin, a constant, silent reminder of her failure. This cold, hard reality is the engine that drives every event in Pride and Prejudice. It is crystallized in the legal predicament known as the entailment of the Bennet family's Longbourn estate. This binding legal arrangement meant their home and its income could only be passed down to a male heir. Since Mr. Bennet had 5 daughters and no sons, upon his death, his entire estate, their home, their security, their identity, would be inherited by his closest male relative, a distant, ridiculous cousin they barely knew. The girls, if they remained unmarried, would be thrown out, left homeless and socially invisible. This is the quiet desperation lurking beneath every witty dialogue and charming country dance, a constant, humming anxiety that fuels Mrs. Bennet's obsessive matchmaking. This relentless pressure to secure a future, to present a perfect, marketable version of oneself, isn't just a historical problem locked in the 19th century. It is the same pressure we live with in 2025, magnified through the lens of social media and global competition. It's the anxiety of curating the perfect Instagram feed, of building a personal brand, of getting into the right college, of landing the perfect job in a precarious market. It is the pervasive fear of being left behind, the feeling that you are one wrong move away from failure while everyone else's highlight reel scrolls on. The Bennet sisters' frantic search for a suitable husband is the Regency equivalent of our modern obsession with external validation, a desperate attempt to secure our worth in the eyes of the world. Austen isn't just critiquing her society. She's holding up a mirror to the timeless human fear that our worth is defined by our social and economic standing, a fear that is perhaps more potent now than it ever was. When she finally published the novel in 1813, she did so anonymously, by a lady. Yet this anonymity could not hide the genius within. From her small, creaking writing desk, Jane Austen saw everything. She saw the foolishness, the hypocrisy, the vanity, and the profound, often hidden, decency of the people around her. And she poured it all into a story that is not just about finding a husband, but about the revolutionary power of seeing another person clearly, and in doing so, truly coming to know yourself. It is a truth, universally acknowledged, that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. With this single, iconic sentence, Austen opens her novel with a dose of masterful irony. It is not, of course, a universal truth, but it is the absolute, unquestionable truth of the small, gossiping, and marriage-obsessed world of the Bennet family. The arrival of just such a man, the wealthy and amiable Mr. Charles Bingley, sends a shockwave of excitement and speculation through their quiet neighborhood of Meryton. The atmosphere is electric. This is the biggest event of the season. At the local assembly, the air is thick with the scent of perfume and the sound of violins. But when Bingley enters, he doesn't come alone. He is accompanied by his sisters and by a man who is even wealthier and far more imposing, Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy. His entrance sucks the air from the room. Whispers follow him. He is handsome, tall, and rumoured to be worth £10,000 a year, an almost mythical sum. But the initial admiration quickly sours. The man is proud, aloof, and carries an air of disdain for the provincial company he finds himself in. Here we meet our protagonist, Elizabeth Bennet. She is not the most beautiful of her sisters, that title belongs to the gentle and angelic Jane, but she is by far the most intelligent, defined by her lively, playful disposition, which delighted in anything ridiculous. She is sharp, fiercely independent, and unwilling to bow to the foolish conventions of her society. She is, in every sense, a modern heroine trapped in a world that doesn't yet know what to do with her, and it is she who bears the brunt of Darcy's arrogance. The inciting incident for the entire story happens here, in this crowded, overheated ballroom. When Mr. Bingley suggests Darcy dance with Elizabeth, he delivers a line of casual, brutal cruelty, a line he never imagines she will overhear. She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me. This isn't just a 19th century insult. It's the original, swipe left. It is the brutal, casual judgment we see and perform every single day in the 21st century, dismissing someone's entire worth based on one bad photo on a dating app, one awkward comment at a party, or one opinion expressed on social media. We all have an internal algorithm that sorts and categorizes people in seconds, often based on the most superficial data. We build entire narratives around these snap judgments, these cognitive shortcuts. Austen shows us the devastating consequences of this universal human flaw. In that single moment of unthinking arrogance, the two forces that give the novel its title are born. His is the pride of a man who believes himself so far above his company that he doesn't need to show basic courtesy. Hers is the prejudice of a woman who, having been so thoroughly and publicly dismissed, immediately judges him to be the last man in the world she could ever be prevailed on to marry. Her wounded pride creates a deep-seated bias, a lens of contempt through which she will view his every future action. Their conflict is not a simple romance. It is a profound psychological journey, asking if two people can ever overcome the flawed stories they tell themselves about each other. It's about the slow, painful, and ultimately revolutionary journey toward love at second sight, a journey that can only begin after their disastrous first impressions have been completely burned to the ground. Every great love story needs its obstacles, and in Pride and Prejudice, the obstacles are not dragons or curses, but a terrifyingly real gallery of fools, manipulators, and tyrants. These characters are the living embodiment of the social pressures that seek to crush Elizabeth's spirit and reinforce Darcy's pride. First, and most memorably, is Mr. Collins, the man who will legally inherit the Bennet estate. He is not a villain in the traditional sense. He is a fool of epic proportions, a man whose entire personality is a cringe-worthy mix of pompous self-importance and grovelling civility to his patroness, the formidable Lady Catherine de Bourgh. He arrives with the intention of marrying one of the Bennet daughters, seeing it as a noble way to atone for the injustice of the entailment. His proposal to Elizabeth is a masterclass in psychological horror, presented as comedy. He lists his reasons for marrying her as if he were closing a business deal, noting his own clerical duty and the wishes of his patroness. He expresses no genuine affection, only a deluded belief in his own desirability. When Elizabeth firmly refuses him, he is incapable of comprehending it, dismissing her rejection as a mere ploy of feminine modesty designed to heighten his ardor. Elizabeth's firm and final refusal is her first great act of rebellion. She chooses the terrifying uncertainty of poverty over the soul-crushing certainty of a life shackled to this ridiculous man, proving her self-respect is not for sale. But if Mr. Collins is a fool who represents the pressure to marry for security, the next obstacle is a predator who represents a far more insidious danger: deceit. George Wickham is a charming sociopath who preys on good women. He is everything. Darcy is not handsome, attentive, and possessing an easy grace that instantly wins over everyone he meets, especially Elizabeth. He appears to be the perfect gentleman, an open book of warmth and sincerity. When he shares his tragic backstory with Elizabeth, she is completely captivated. He spins a tale of being the godson of Darcy's late father, who had promised him a valuable position as a clergyman. But, Wickham claims, the jealous and cruel Fitzwilliam Darcy defied his own father's dying wish and denied him this inheritance, leaving him penniless. This story is a calculated masterpiece of manipulation. It preys perfectly on Elizabeth's pre-existing prejudice against Darcy, confirming all of her worst assumptions about his character. To her, Wickham is the noble victim, and Darcy is the cruel oppressor. Wickham is a timeless villain, a testament to Austen's keen understanding that true evil rarely announces itself with monstrous features. Instead, it often hides behind a handsome smile, a sympathetic story, and a profound understanding of how to exploit our desire for a simple narrative of good versus evil. The final and most formidable obstacle is Lady Catherine de Bourgh, Darcy's aunt. She is the living embodiment of aristocratic pride and entitlement, a tyrant who believes her wealth and title give her the right to dictate the lives of everyone around her, especially her nephews. She is domineering, arrogant, and obsessed with class distinctions. She exists to show us the world that created Mr. Darcy. His pride, we begin to understand, is not just a personal flaw, but an inherited one, forged in a society that values birth and wealth above all else. Lady Catherine is the ultimate gatekeeper, representing the systemic forces that try to keep people in their place. These three characters are not mere plot devices. They are Austen's satirical instruments, each one brilliantly crafted to expose a different flaw in Regency society. They build a web of lies, expectations, and social pressure around Elizabeth and Darcy, pushing them further apart and making their eventual understanding seem all but impossible. With Elizabeth's prejudice now cemented by what she believes to be irrefutable proof of Darcy's villainy, the stage is set not for a romance, but for an explosive confrontation that will change everything. A proposal of marriage should be a moment of romance, but what happens when it becomes an act of war? The simmering tension between Elizabeth and Darcy finally boils over at Hunsford Parsonage, the home of the dreadful Mr. Collins, and it is here that the novel's heart is laid bare. The scene is tense. Elizabeth is already agitated by news that Darcy may have been involved in her sister Jane's romantic disappointment. When Darcy enters, he finds her alone. To her utter astonishment, he confesses his love for her. But it is a hostile takeover, not a confession of affection. It is one of the most disastrously arrogant proposals in literary history. He does not woo her, he insults her. He speaks not of her virtues, but of his own internal struggle, how he has admired and loved her against his will, against his reason, and against his character. He elaborates on the great injury to his pride. It would be to connect himself to her family, with their inferior social standing and lack of propriety. He is essentially telling her, despite my better judgment and the immense social sacrifice it will be for me, I have decided to overlook your flaws and grant you the honor of my hand. It is a declaration born of supreme pride, and it is met with the full, righteous force of her prejudice. Elizabeth's rejection is fiery, eloquent, and absolute. She unleashes all of her accumulated anger and contempt, telling him she could never feel any gratitude for a proposal delivered in such a manner. She then confronts him with two devastating accusations: that he has callously ruined her beloved sister Jane's happiness by separating her from Bingley, and that he has cruelly destroyed the life and prospects of the noble Mr. Wickham. She concludes by telling him that he is the last man in the world whom she could ever be prevailed on to marry. Darcy is stunned into silence, not by the rejection itself, but by the sheer force and nature of her accusations. He had entered the room supremely confident she would gratefully accept his gracious offer, and is instead confronted with a portrait of himself as a cruel, unjust monster. The next day, he finds her on her walk and hands her a letter. This document is the novel's great turning point. This isn't just a letter, it is a dossier, the ultimate receipt that forces Elizabeth to re-examine all the so-called evidence she has gathered against him. In it, Darcy systematically dismantles her accusations. He reveals the shocking truth about George Wickham. Far from a victim, Wickham is a liar, a debaucher, and a gambler who had squandered the generous inheritance Darcy's father left him. Then, in a truly shocking act of villainy, Wickham had attempted to elope with Darcy's own 15-year-old sister, Georgiana, purely to get his hands on her £30,000 fortune. Darcy's intervention had saved his sister from a lifetime of ruin. He then admits to separating Jane and Bingley, but explains his reasoning. Observing Jane's serene and reserved manner, he had genuinely concluded her affections were not serious, and he wished to protect his friend from the social disadvantage of marrying into the chaotic and often improper Bennet family. The psychological impact on Elizabeth is profound. As she reads, her world tilts on its axis. Every certainty she held crumbles into dust. She walks for miles, reading the letter again and again. A civil war erupts in her mind as she is forced to confront her own fallibility. She realizes with a sickening sense of shame that she has been blind, partial, prejudiced, absurd. This is the moment she realizes the story she told herself was a complete lie. It is the dawning of understanding, the recognition that Wickham's charm masked a corrupt soul, while Darcy's awkward pride concealed a deep integrity. Her journey is no longer about judging the world. It's about confronting her own capacity for error. How does a man of immense pride prove his worth? Not with grand declarations or eloquent apologies, but with a quiet act of honor that no one is ever meant to see. The final act of Pride and Prejudice is a journey not just toward love, but toward profound personal transformation, a change that is revealed through action, not words. Months later, on a trip with her aunt and uncle, Elizabeth finds herself unexpectedly touring Darcy's magnificent estate, Pemberley, having been assured that the owner was away from home. This visit is the key that unlocks the final door of her understanding. Pemberley isn't just a mansion, it's Darcy in physical form. It is his character made visible. Unlike the stuffy, ostentatious homes of others in his class, Pemberley is grand but tasteful, ordered, and in perfect harmony with the natural landscape. It reflects a man of substance and refinement, not arrogance. As she walks through his home, she sees a portrait of him and is struck by the gentle intelligence in his eyes. More importantly, she hears his housekeeper, a woman who has known him since he was 4 years old, speak of him with genuine warmth and affection. She describes him not as a proud master, but as a kind and generous brother, a fair landlord, and the best of men. For the first time, Elizabeth is seeing the private Darcy, the man stripped of his stiff, awkward social armor. And then, to her horror, Darcy himself arrives home early. But the man she meets is not the arrogant figure from Hunsford. He is gracious, gentle, and eager to please her and her relatives. This is the beginning of a true thaw, a second chance at a first impression. This tentative new understanding is shattered by catastrophic news. Her youngest sister, Lydia, a foolish and reckless 16-year-old, has run away with the predator, George Wickham. This is an act of absolute social ruin. In Regency society, a woman's reputation was everything, and an unmarried woman living with a man was considered permanently disgraced. Lydia's elopement threatens to destroy the entire Bennet family forever, making her respectable sisters unmarriageable outcasts. The family is thrown into chaos and despair. Elizabeth is convinced that this final, unforgivable disgrace has destroyed any hope of a future with Darcy. She believes he would never align himself with such a scandal-ridden family, but she is wrong. In the background, Darcy performs a quiet act of heroism. He uses his own network and influence to hunt down the couple in London. He then uses his own vast fortune, a significant sum, to pay off Wickham's massive gambling debts and bribe him into marrying Lydia, thus saving her and the entire Bennet family from public ruin. He does all of this secretly, swearing the family to silence. He does not do it to win Elizabeth. He does it because it is the right and honorable thing to do, a true act of character in an age that often valued appearance above all else. His quiet, effective action stands in stark contrast to our modern era of performative kindness and virtue signaling. He fixes the problem without seeking any credit. When Elizabeth accidentally discovers his secret heroism from her aunt, it is the final piece of the puzzle. All of her remaining prejudice crumbles, replaced by a deep sense of gratitude and admiration. Their second proposal is not a fairy tale moment, but the hard-won result of two people having the courage to confront their deepest flaws. It is the triumph of understanding over judgment. In the end, Austen's masterpiece isn't a comforting romance that ends with a wedding. It's a warning and a challenge. It leaves us with one unsettling question for our own lives. Who have you already written off? Who have you dismissed with a single glance or a single word? And what beautiful truth are you blind to, simply because of your own pride? If you enjoyed this deep dive into the darker truths hidden beneath Austen's polished romance, hit that like button and let me know in the comments which classic novel you'd like me to dissect next. Subscribe for more literary analysis that reveals the shocking realities behind our most beloved stories. Don't let the algorithm write you off with a snap judgment ring, that notification bell, so you never miss when we uncover the brutal truths your English teacher never told you.